Taking you all the way back to 1979. Our in-studio guest, Mr. Gene Watson. Let's pick the Wildwood Flower. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. You doing all right, Tracy?
I'm wonderful. Very good to see you.
Good to be here.
I
Thank
always
you.
look forward to sitting down and visiting with you.
Well, I've got a lot of stories to tell.
Well, we hadn't even scratched the surface then.
It's a pleasure. It's been a while since I was here, and thanks for asking me back.
Always a pleasure. You know, I was a fan of yours when I was just a kid starting out. Man, you were one of those guys that I emulated and tried to sing like, so you had a big influence on me.
Well, I really appreciate it. I've always been, I guess, sort of a standardized country artist.
I wouldn't say that.
But I can say I did it my way. We're celebrating 60 years in the business, and
Really?
we're calling this our 60-year anniversary tour. And I got a lot of things to look back on, and we're having a big time with it.
So what would you say was your personal highlight of those 60 years in the business?
Probably when I got invited to be a member of the Grand Ole Opry, just
Really?
before the pandemic happened.
Wow.
But no, there's been a lot of highlights, a lot of highs and lows and in betweens. But I guess I could go all the way back to when the Wilburn brothers asked me to be on the Grand Ole Opry, on their segment of the show, and I never would have dreamed that I'd ever had that opportunity. But that was certainly a highlight.
You know, I think when you grow up dreaming of doing this professionally for a living, it's more of a lifestyle than a job. You're committing to a long-term thing. Any regrets? Anything you wish you'd have done?
Not really. I mean, needless to say, I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes, but given the same chance over again, I'd probably do them the same way. I never was a superstar. Never did intend to be a superstar. And in fact, I never was sure I did hear my voice on the radio. But music's been good to me, and probably more than I ever dreamed that it would be to me.
Who are some of those early influences for you?
I think one of the main ones was Lefty Frizzell.
Yeah.
But I listened to all of them. I thought Lefty was ahead of his time. He was a smooth singer. I loved his phrasing and everything. But I listened to all of them. Webb Pierce, Carl Smith, Farron Young.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like I listened to all of them and tried to learn a little bit from each and every one of them and kind of incorporate it into Gene Watson some way.
You ever think about, you go all the way back to Hank Williams Sr. and try to figure out, they say he could write a song in 10 minutes and just his natural ability. I mean, who influenced them? Where were they getting those influences? Guys that grew up in the modern music era, you were hearing stuff on the radio. We were able to buy records. Yep. You were able to kind of pick a little bit from this one and a little bit from that one and see if your voice worked in that direction and kind of make a hodgepodge of some of your favorite artists. They didn't have that ability.
That's right. They didn't have that many forerunners. I mean, they more or less paved the way, and so you might say they instigated the biggest part of it. So
even song structure, you think about how Hank Williams Sr. I mean, his song structure is still relevant today.
Oh yeah,
for the most part.
Yeah.
No, we're still copying it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like people are still doing that same thing.
Verse, chorus,
bridge, chorus.
Yeah, I remember when I didn't know what a bridge was except for crossing.
How old were you when you picked the guitar up for the first time?
I think about maybe 8 or 9. And I like to drove everybody crazy, trying to learn how to. What the thing was, I loved to sing, but I couldn't play, and I had to ask my sister, just older than me, to play guitar for me.
That hurt, didn't it?
Oh, I was embarrassed. I didn't have no trouble with the singing, but boy, that got to be a huge embarrassment, So I started trying to learn, and I'll never forget. I like drove everybody crazy with D, C, G, A. It was a long time for me.
Yeah, it's I never really had the opportunity to take guitar lessons, so I just kind of fumbled through it and kind of learned out of song books and different things. Did you ever take lessons or anything?
No, never did, except for my sister. That was embarrassing too.
Well, my baby sister beat me when I was 14 years old in a talent contest at the county fair. And I played guitar and sang a song I wrote, and she had a piano accompaniment and sang The Rose by Bette Midler, and I'm still ashamed of that whole thing. I hadn't forgot it
He's
yet.
still mad about it. She beat him in the
wood. So I understand completely. You just don't let go of that stuff too easy.
It was great. My mom could play. She didn't play too much, but she really knew how, and she showed me a couple of things. My older sister more or less taught my older brother how to play. And now, I can say my sister, that's older than me, kind of taught me how to play. So I don't know. It just seemed like the females always knew a little bit more, a little bit quicker than the males did.
Well, we had other things on our mind.
Yeah, really.
All the way back to 1993, Alibis. In studio with Mr. Gene Watson. And let's go back to that very first hit record, man. When back in '75, what was the music industry like for you back then? Did you come to Nashville? Did you live here? Did you stay in Texas?
No, I was in Texas, and I had more or less been discovered by a couple of guys that had a lot of faith in me and wanted to know if I would like to do some recording. And I remember vividly saying, yeah, if you'll take me to Nashville. But I didn't want to record locally because I didn't think that was the way it was done.
Yeah.
And so they agreed to it. And we came to Nashville and recorded, 3 or 4 sides. In fact, the first that we recorded up here was produced by none other than Cowboy Jack Clement.
Oh, yeah.
And so that kind of got me started, and I recorded for small independent labels. And until I came across a song called Love in the Hot Afternoon. And the song just knocked me out. I thought it was a great song, but I was a little afraid of the lyrics for that day and time. But it had been recorded several times, and they had altered the lyrics, trying to soften it up and everything, afraid of not getting airplay. And I told my manager, I said, I want to cut this, but I want to cut it the way it was written. And if it works, it does. If it don't, it don't. So we did. We came to Nashville and recorded it. That was in 1974. Well, we released it on an independent label in 1975. And almost, within a month or two, Capitol Records signed me up to a long-term contract and re-released it on Capitol. And the song finished the year number 4 for 1975. Although it never reached number 1, it was a huge, huge song for me, and what got the ball rolling.
When that record really started doing well on the charts, you remember feeling like what were you feeling back then? I mean, I like hearing how everybody's emotions were when you.
Well, you'd been playing honky tonks and whatever for 10 years, right?
Oh yeah, I'd been working the nightclubs for a long time. Honky tonk's a better word, but yeah, and I didn't change that much. Love in the Hot Afternoon was right in line with everything I was doing on stage and for the dance halls and everything, and so I felt really at home, except when it really lit up and started playing hot on the radio.
Yeah.
And there for a while, I didn't know what to think, because every time you turned the country radio on, well, you heard Love in the Hot Afternoon. I mean, that was a hot song. The one thing we did wrong, we lost it in the southern market. I'm talking about Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and everything, because when we released it, it started up the charts, and it peaked out in some of the major markets around Dallas, Oklahoma City, Shreveport, places like that. And by the time Capitol got it re-released on their label,
they had already peaked out.
Yeah, we'd already peaked in our area, but then it started coming up nationally, and it kind of peaked out nationally before it got to number 1. But huge record for me.
That's fascinating to me. John Conley was in here just a couple of weeks back, and he was saying he had a record that was similar to that. That they went through
Rose-colored glasses.
Yeah, had re-released it after, and certain markets had already peaked out. That don't really happen much anymore. I mean,
No, I heard about the rose-colored glasses and everything, and if I heard right, they released it, and it really didn't do that much, and then they dug it back out later on and re-released it. It really, when it, really started taking off and hitting. So you never know. You just do the best you can and hope for the best.
Well, this one turned out pretty dang good. Here's Gene Watson and Love in the Hot Afternoon. Merle Haggard chase each other around the room tonight. I still miss old Merle, man.
Oh, man. I talk about it in my shows. Merle, George Jones. You ever think about not being able to buy a ticket to go see George? I mean, if he showed up.
No, not at all.
And being without Merle, it was sort of like it was a fixture that was always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I worked the road so much with these guys, and we were just real good friends. Seemed like every time Merle and I would work together, either he'd come over to my bus and visit, or I'd go over to his and visit, and we always caught up. And I really cherished that, and when I'll never forget the first time I ever was on stage with Merle. Bonnie called me out on stage to help her sing harmony with him, and boy, it was a thrill in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I enjoyed that. And then, of course, in Branson, Merle called me out to sit in with him in a little bit, and he was just priceless. You know, anybody that says their country and says they don't like Merle Haggard, well, they're lying one way or the other.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
because he was what it was all about.
You know, if you think about it, what an amazing career he had, and how many people did he influence along the way? I mean, my whole generation of us.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
he was
yeah.
Just the smoothness of his delivery. There was something about Merle's voice that was just captivating. It really was.
Yeah,
for me and a lot of
unlike
people.
anybody else.
Yeah. And Jones too, but Jones was completely different as a young artist. Whoo, George had that range, son. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
you had to learn to get there. I mean, that was not an easy thing for a young kid to learn to sing like
The
George.
high part of it, I could hit pretty good, but them lows,
Yeah.
I couldn't dig that deep. You know.
Now, you
George-
talk about Merle. I'm looking here at the two of y'all. You know, just kind of outside looking in. Two of my favorite country singers of all time. And your first single, 1975. Your first hit single, 1993. Right, 92. Yeah. 17 years apart. Both of you would name Merle as one of your top 3 or 4 influences.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
You know, that's how big of a range of influence he had over that long of a time.
You know, I got to it was early 2000s. I was out with Mark Chestnut and Joe Diffie, did a thing called the Rock and Roadhouse tour, and we were playing Redding, California.
I remember that tour.
And they worked it out where we could go out and see Merle at his house. He was in the studio, and Joe and I went. Mark, something was going on with Mark, but we got to sit and visit with Merle, and I got the feeling just from having the conversation with him, but I don't really think Merle understood the impact that he truly had on the generation behind him. I don't think he really got it.
I think Merle was satisfied with what he did, you know, and you flat weren't going to change his mind, you know. If he had an idea about something, that's the way it was. So don't talk to him about changing. I was sitting on his houseboat with him up at Lake Shasta. We were working up there, and he sent for me to come down to his houseboat. And I was right in the middle of changing labels, and he got Tex Whitson on the phone and everything, and set up the attorneys and everything, and we met him. We flew and met him at the airport in Atlanta, and more or less outlined my contract with Epic Records. And
Really?
And Merle and I talked a lot, and man, he just meant so much to me. I mean, now the way I was, if Merle said it, that's good enough for me.
Did you ever do a duet with him in the studio?
I never did. I never did. I just that's something I really regret. You know, there might be some tape out there somewhere of us singing on the same stage, but I never did have the pleasure of recording with him, and that's something I really regret.
So I'm going to tell you something. You're going to laugh at me. So this next song that we're going to play, for years I thought it was Paper Roses. and I'm not the only one, believe me. So tell me about Paper Rosie.
You know, that song like to got me kicked off the label. You know, Frank Jones was heading up country division at Capitol Records, and of course he was Canadian, and this song was written by Dallas Harms, a Canadian. Well, Frank was up there on attending a seminar, and he came back with this song, and he said, "I think I found an ideal song for Gene Watson." And they brought it to me and played it for me and everything. And really, I didn't go for it. I didn't, for some reason or other, I couldn't find it. And he really, really wanted me to cut that song. So I went in and really didn't try that hard and actually didn't do it any good at all. Left all, feeling bad about it. But he called me. He found where I was at and called me on the road. And he told me, I think if you'd go back in there and try a little bit harder with a little bit different attitude. He said, I think you could really pull this song off. So him being who he was and everything, I went back in and, we added a flute, a clarinet, and 3 horns we put on that session. And somewhere in the midst of it, I fell in love with the song and somehow knew when we left that we had a good song, that really something. And sure enough, it went number 1.
All the way back to 1977. Here's Gene Watson, Paper Rosie. We are Honky Tonkin with Mr. Gene Watson. Hearing some good stories, maybe a lie or two thrown in there for good measure.
Got to have a lie or two.
So why did you never move to Nashville? Why did you always stay away?
Well, I guess I was hard-headed. I don't know. But I always thought that Nashville was great, to record. I mean, I'm managed out of Nashville.
Yeah.
My booking agency's in Nashville. Everything I do is centered out of Nashville. But I never did want to leave Texas. I was born in Texas, raised in Texas, and still make my home in Texas. And I didn't want to change that too much. I didn't want to if you will, lean toward the Nashville side of it. Every time I went in the studio up here to record, I recorded what was on my mind, what I wanted to record. I picked my own material.
Yeah.
And I don't think I wanted to be influenced with, if you will, the clique that was going on in Nashville. And I don't need to explain that to you, you know. And so I just decided to keep it all, you know, from Texas. And then every time I come up here, well, I was fresh and ready to do my thing, good, bad, or indifferent. It was what I wanted to do.
When did they induct you into the Texas Music Hall of Fame?
Oh, boy. I hadn't got my lady Sarah in here with me, and I don't remember the year. It's been probably about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years ago.
Texas Country Music Hall of Fame in 2002, so 20 years ago.
Oh, see how time flies when you're getting old?
It goes by really fast, don't it?
But you know, I was really thrilled by that because it's quite an elite bunch that's in that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm in the Texas Country Music Hall of Fame, and I appreciate that. And of course, this is something that, you know, you have to wait on them. And I don't think it's something that you can bring on yourself. They have to make up their mind when and how to do it. And so it's extra special to me.
Yeah, I can see that, man. You know, that's a huge cast of folks that are on that list there. It's amazing. There's so many. You know, you look back and you think what an influence the Texas artists really were for this format. Texas had a lot of power over this format for a long time.
They did.
I mean, it's you can basically work Texas the rest of your life.
Oh yeah, you know,
for the
and
most part.
there's been a lot of artists, you know, throw that quote out there.
Do you like the Texas music scene? Do you listen to some of the new music from the kids down there?
That's not really me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still like I say, Lefty Frizzell always knocked me out. I'm the smoother type, you know, country side, and they're a little bit more brash, you know, a little bit more raw.
It is a little bit more raw.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I'm a little bit smoother and textured than that, but hey, I want everybody to succeed, you know, and they're making a big move.
Do you listen to any radio at all? What new stuff coming out of Nashville? Any young kids that strike a chord with you?
I don't listen that much, you know, but there is a few that jump out at me, you know, every once in a while. Yeah, I thought when Billy Currington came out, I said, man, this guy is something else,
He
you
can
know.
sing, yeah.
And there's a few of them out there that I think are really good. I'm not really sure that they came up through the ranks like you and I did, you know, because when I grew up, when I came up my career, and you're the same way, there was a certain amount of dues that had to be paid.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, you didn't just jump out there overnight, and you might become a superstar overnight, but you went out just that fast. And I just never did want to be a flash in the pan. And I think some of these new artists coming out, they're making a big splash, but I think we'll know more about them in 10 years.
Yeah, you know, it's awful hard to get thrown into the business side of it, and if you haven't learned to structure a show, and you haven't learned what kind of band you want to put together, you really don't have any idea what your vocal direction is going to be. And a lot of times they manufacture a kid and just throw them out there. And I know artists in the business, current artists, that don't even put their own set list together.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that.
You know, that's amazing to me.
Absolutely amazing.
To me, it goes back to the paying the dues, knowing what you want to do, and sticking by your guns. And it's also something else to make friends and know who to make friends with. I remember my bus was down, and we were working a show together, me and you and Chestnut.
Yeah.
And I got there, and I didn't even have a dressing room or nothing, and you let me use your coach to go back and change clothes and everything. They don't do that no more.
But
They're
that's the
above
way it's
that,
supposed
you know?
to be.
Yeah, it should be.
And especially respect the people that came before you. I've always I believe that's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, I'll never forget that, you know, and of course, you're one of my favorite artists. Chestnut's one of my favorite artists,
too.
and you know, and that means a lot to me. I mean, in other words, when they mention Gene Watson, boy, you know what they're talking about. You've been there. We've worked together, and the new ones that's coming out, I want them to succeed, but I still think, you know, a lot of these careers are going to have to be tried a little bit longer before you know if they're true or not.
I didn't believe that Mark would have ever left Texas. I thought he was a lot like you in that regard. He just moved to Tennessee.
He called me and told me that, and I like to drop the phone.
I'm like, are you what?
Yeah. He said, man, I've had it. He said, I'm leaving Texas. He said,
And
"I
he
think
didn't come to Nashville. He's outside of Nashville.
yeah. But I'm like you. I never would have thought he would have left. But
Nobody would have ever. You could have held a gun to my head, and I wouldn't have believed it.
yeah.
So
Right.
Farewell Party. Where did Farewell Party come from?
The first time I ever heard that song was on believe it or not, a Waylon Jennings album, and it was
Really?
and it was a RCA Camden album. It was one of their lesser labels, and I heard it by him. Of course, it was quite a bit different from the way I do it, but man, I loved the song. Johnny Bush had it out, huge Texas artist, and I just loved the song from the first time I heard it. But I was doing this song in nightclubs several years before I ever recorded it.
It seems like back in the 70s, it wasn't taboo for, even if somebody had a hit, Merle would cut something that George cut or that Paycheck cut or Johnny Rodriguez cut. I mean, it wasn't taboo at all. You won't hardly hear anybody doing that nowadays.
No, but you know yourself, Tracy, a good song is a good song.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of people might record it, release it, not do nothing. Another one record it, release it, boom, it takes off. So
right song for the right artist at the right time.
That's it.
Here's Gene Watson, Farewell Party. There's that big old range. Oh, goodness.
I had to work hard to record that song because everybody thought it was too sad, too morbid, too laid back, too dark. But I always loved the song, and I knew it would work because I'd done it in clubs, and I knew people just loved it everywhere that I'd been working. And one session we were just finishing up, and we had about 15, 20 minutes. And I just jumped up and said, look, I've always wanted to do this. We're going to do it. And I grabbed a guitar and got down on one knee in the middle of the studio over at Jack Clemens' studio, Emporium. And all the musicians gathered around, and I sung the song, went through the chord progression and everything. They made their chord charts. We got on, made sure all the mics were hot, and we started rolling tape. It even had the background vocals over there. And we rolled that tape, and Lloyd Green killed me with that steel guitar. And we just played it one time. No overdubs, no nothing.
One take.
One take.
What we just heard, that was one take.
That was one take. And I
that.
talk about it all the time. You know yourself. So many new artists come to Nashville looking for something that notoriety, you know what I mean, a career song.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they never find it. And I tell everybody, I was so lucky. I found one in less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, but it took 6 years to get to that 15 minutes.
It took a long time. But it's been great. That's by far the most requested song of my career.
We'll be back with more Gene Watson and a whole lot more great country music after this. Did you always cut with background singers in the studio?
Yeah, I did.
That's a lost art, too, now.
Yeah, I'm reminded just about every time I come to Nashville that I'm doing things the old school way, you know. And I can't help it. When it first started coming in, I call it, sending the hard drive around the block, and having this and put on that and put on it. And I thought, man, how synthetic that is. And I can't, for me to get into a song, I need those players out there. And I think it helps for them to get into it, to hear me in there. You know what I mean?
I agree, absolutely.
And I just refuse to record unless I got the band there with me. And of course, I've done some of the background vocals myself, but I always wanted the background vocals right there too when I could. And sometimes nowadays we'll put them in afterwards, but I still record the old way with all them guys in there.
And I do too, especially masters and stuff. And the demos, we'll piece stuff around. You know?
Sure.
Get a drummer to lay a track down. Nowadays, you've got Pro Tools. Everybody's got Pro Tools at home. So you can just email the track, and it's amazing how far it's come. But with all that convenience and all that ability to make these flawless, slick records, it's lost the warmth and the soul of it.
Absolutely.
I don't think it sounds the same. And I think there's a generation of young kids growing up that really don't know how good a record can sound.
That's right.
Because everything's just squished right here.
It takes the emotion.
It does.
I mean, you got, like Farewell Party, for instance. When Lloyd Green got through playing that ride, I mean, boy, you may be half choked up because of what he laid down, but it made you want to get your teeth in it that much deeper. And Harold Bradley was playing acoustic guitar on that session, and he had no idea I was going for that last note. But what's worse than that, I didn't know either.
Really?
You know?
So
Yeah.
that wasn't a note that you were hitting when
Oh, no,
you had been playing it.
It was just spontaneous. I had no idea how that was going to turn out. In fact, I wasn't sure it was even going to be a take or whether we'd keep it or not. I just wanted a copy of it, you know, and that was what was on my mind. And when I got to it, well, here we go, you know. And it seemed like everybody in the band just went right with me, you know, and it really turned out.
You know, that's the magic of the players that here in Nashville. I mean, I say that we've got the last true American poets in our songwriters
Absolutely.
here, and some of the best players in the entire world. That the chemistry of them being able to go in and lock themselves in a studio for, you know, a 10, 2, and a 6, as opposed to the way that rock and roll records are made, where they spend millions of dollars and go in and write in the studio. I think we are much more efficient. We have much better players. I just think
I
our
do
industry is
too.
much better streamlined.
A lot of the different kinds of music, you know, they might go in there and they book studio time for, you know, 3 weeks, and they'll go in there and sit around and talk and drink and have a good time and party and everything, and they might get one song in 3 days.
Yeah.
I never could afford that for one thing, you know. And I remember when we used to come up here to Nashville, well, we would try to depend on getting 4 songs in a session.
Yeah.
You know?
That's pushing it right there.
Yeah, but I knew the songs I wanted to do, and these players, just like you said, it's such a testament to them.
Oh, yeah.
Man, they would lock in and
Oh, and they can play twin parts with each other, and they
Oh,
give
just-
a look. I mean,
yeah.
especially even if it's not the same section every time. A lot of these guys are so used to working with each
Absolutely.
other within this system that it's amazing. And I know rock and roll bands that have come here and cut it Ocean Way and rent the building for 3 months.
yeah.
You know, I just think that there's you craft the lyric, and it's those guys might cut the same track over and over for 2 days and add this and that. I think the lyric is supposed to hold the body of the song.
Right,
I
right.
really believe that's what it's all about.
I try my best to build a pyramid, you know, get that vocal right there on top, and then get your acoustic guitars and your piano, your rhythm around it, you know, and it's just it's a different way of recording, Tracy, and you and I don't do it the way they do it nowadays, but you know they would probably feel out of place if we asked them to do it the way we do it.
You know, I think like Farewell Party for you, man, that's up there with He Stopped Loving Her Today and Doug Stone's Pine Box. I mean, that's one of those kind of songs that you just have to really sink your teeth into.
Yeah,
They're
you got to
special
get
things.
into it.
You got to get into it. Here's Randy Travis for you. We are Honky Tonkin with Gene Watson. So 14 Karat Mine. So we did that when Darren was still playing for me. We used to do that at a show. I still drag one of those old ones out every now and then. They're fun to play. I still enjoy it. Where did you find that song? I mean, did the producer bring it to you? You said you pretty much find all your stuff yourself.
I found it at the bottom of a box after listening to songs for
Really?
3/4 of the night. Yeah, it was just about daybreak, and we was going down the road on the bus, and I'd listened to all the cassettes and everything that was in this box.
Yep.
And right down at the bottom, there was one reel-to-reel tape of 7.5, you know, RPM, reel-to-reel. And I was so tired, and I was about ready to go to bed, and I looked there, and the label said Dallas Frazier on it. Well, I don't need to tell you. If somebody sends you something with Dallas Frazier's name, you listen. And I did, and I threaded up the old machine and everything and played it. Boy, I knew within the first 8 bars of that song, I'd found a song I really, really needed. And we recorded it in 81, released it the latter part of 1981, and it was the first #1 song for 1982.
What a big record that was, man. The track was fresh and hot, man. It was a good record.
Yeah, real unique. We tried just about every instrument in the studio to get the right feel and the right intro and everything for that song. And I've actually got put out trying to search for something that I probably knew was there all the time. And finally I told Pig, I said, Pig, kick this thing off. I probably used a little bit stronger language than that, but boy, Pig jumped on that piano and just rattled out that intro just like it is on the record. And
I never had a chance to work with him, but I've heard some amazing stories.
Was he
about how-
really was he that good? Like you just say, go ahead, and then
he was tremendous. He was the one deal breaker with me when I came to Nashville to record. If I couldn't get Pig, I didn't record. I moved the date or something.
Really?
He was that important to me. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he could. He was just such a backbone to everything that I recorded.
Nobody else played like him. I mean, he was just a
he's-
massive left hand.
Yeah, and he could make a chord. He could make a chord, you know, be 4 foot long. You know, I mean, he could just had the hands for it, and it'd be hard for most people to believe he was blind. I mean, in fact, I heard one top-notch musician say, he couldn't play that stuff if he could see what he was doing.
Probably not. That's all.
Oh, man. Did you know Crystal Gale told us he wasn't supposed to play on the session for Don't Make My Brown Eyes Blue. He was a fill-in. Her regular piano player, whoever was supposed to be there, was sick, and so they called in a favor and got picked to show up. And, I mean, you hear that intro in your head, and I don't think anyone else could have done that.
Yeah, and that whirliture that they've got on there, I've got it on my last recordings.
Really? On the new one that's out now?
Yeah, Pig passed it down to Dirk Johnson, who produces me, and we've got it on a couple of my songs.
As much as I love this city, I've lived here for over 30 years now, and when I first moved here in the early 90s, Music Row had such a charm to it, man. I'm telling you, been driving around the back alleys and knowing where everybody's publishing company was, and stopping in and seeing everybody on chart night, or knew so many people that were around. Does Music Row break your heart when you see it now with condos and hotels? I mean, it's just,
I was fixing to say there ain't no Music Row left.
It's not. It's gone.
It used to be really, really something to see, and you could bring somebody up here or somebody coming through. Yeah. You could show them all the fantastic sights, that you saw when you first came up here. And they're not here no more.
They're not here, and it's like. It used to be this little town inside this big city that we had our own little culture and our own people, and it was like a little family, and you knew where everybody was, and you had those 2 or 3 streets over there.
That was Music City.
That was Music City. It wasn't all those towers downtown.
That's right.
It was the little office buildings and little publishing houses, but it's just all changed. We've gained so much. We got great restaurants and all this other stuff, but we've lost what used to make it special.
Most of the great places in Nashville for music, you had to go down the alleys to find them, and you'd pull in here in back of this little, looked like an old house that had been converted, get in there, be beautiful offices and all that, and it's slowly
I don't know if
going
you've
away.
ever had a chance to go there, but there is a cinder block building off Trinity Lane behind the Broken Spoke called Gabe's.
I know exactly where it's
Ron
at.
Sweet would play bass 6 nights a week and stand in there and sing all those old Race Price songs and your songs and George Jones, and I would just go in there and watch Ron sing. It was probably my favorite place of all the dives around this town.
Yeah, well, you stay out there at the Holiday Inn, Trinity Lane.
Oh, yeah.
And my guys, if I missed them, that's where they were.
Back at Gabe's. Yeah. And it was nothing but a cinder block room. I mean, just kind of tucked back in the middle of nowhere. But I like to find the places where the road musicians hung out and the songwriters hung out. Nowadays, you can't have a place like that because somebody's going to tweet where you at.
Yeah. Ain't no hiding no more.
That's it. One and only John Anderson, Black Sheep. I feel that way sometimes.
I'm going to tell you a secret, Gene. We play your songs on the show, and if we play this next song, Tracy can't say the title unless he sings it. He can't. He tries, and it's hard. I admit, it's hard to say, you're out doing what I'm here doing without. It's hard to say that.
I think he's deflecting. I think it's him that
It's
can't
me
say
too,
it.
but also Tracy loves to
ain't
sing.
out here out doing what I'm here doing without.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a good song for me.
It was.
Yeah. I love this. Is there something special about this? Did you find this one in the bottom of a box, or someone bring it to you?
No, the boy that was playing lead guitar for me at the time, it drove me crazy, saying that he had this great song. And I didn't know at that time that Alan Reynolds was co-writer on it. And he kept saying, man, I'm telling you, I got a song for you. I got a song. Fine. And his name was Bo Roberts. And I said, okay, let's hear it. And he played it for him, and sure enough, man, I thought it was a great song, and the title says it all, if you can say it.
Well, I can't say it, but you can sing it. Let's play it.
I think that you're out doing what I'm here doing without.
Okay, it's more fun when he sings it.
Oh, we got to take a little pause for the cause. So if you love music, you need to download the Pickle Jar app, show gratitude to your favorite artist, and support great causes in your hometown. Plus, you can watch exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. Download at picklejar.com. Tell them about it, Patrick.
That's right. So all those bands playing in the honky tonks like Gene when coming up, now instead of having a Pickle Jar on the stage, you just get a little thing from Pickle Jar. It's called a QR code. People can scan it, and they can tip you on the app. And every dollar that you tip the artist goes to the artist.
Well, you can't beat that.
That ain't no way to go, Brooks and Dunn. In studio with Mr. Gene Watson. Have you done much European stuff? You tour Europe much at all?
I've quit.
Yeah, don't like that long flight.
I have done a lot of it and enjoyed it. It was something new, and and I played a lot of packages, overseas, and had fun with it. But it kind of started getting old, and not the fans, mind you, because I've got some great fans, all over England, Ireland, Scotland. I've worked all over there, and Germany. We've played all over the place over there, even to Japan. But everything the way it is in the world today, I just I feel better with my feet on the ground in the good old U.S. of A. And in fact, as much as I love Canada, as much as Canada's done for me, riding and all that, I'm extremely reluctant to even go to Canada or anywhere. I've just about quit the cruises and everything because I've got so many places here in the States, that can keep me hopping. I mean, I don't need to jump on a plane, sit there for 8 to 10 hours, and then do 5 shows in the length of time that usually you can't do but 3. And because the minute you get off the plane, they got you covered up in things to do, and which I don't mind doing, but I'm kind of past that stage. I'm a little long in the tooth, and so I just I stay kind of stuck in the U.S.
Where's your favorite place to play? You got a couple of old honky tonks you still love?
There's so many of them when you've been in the business 60 years, and it'd be hard to settle in on one. I used to play the Grahams, those places. In fact, we were working up in New Mexico here not too long ago, and I didn't even know it, but I run into one of the guys that I worked for out in Phoenix that worked for Graham. He had the Graham, Central Stations and all that, and so I could reminisce for quite a while, come up with several that I can't remember everything about them. But
I love old Herb, man. He's been a good guy to me.
Yeah,
I've known him for a long time.
That's it's just there's so many. Georgia, great state of Georgia. I love working Georgia, the Carolinas, and Kentucky. I mean, there's so much about all of them that I really love, and it's all about the fans. When they come out to see you, that right there, you automatically hang on to.
So I've got a couple of crazy fan experiences. Dig back in your memory now, see if you can find one crazy fan experience that you can share with me.
One bad experience?
Just a crazy fan experience.
I can tell you the craziest experience I ever had in my life.
That's what we want.
I was sitting in my hometown of Paris, Texas, and my road manager, Larry Booth, called me on the phone, and he said, where you at? I said, I'm in Paris. He said, what do you mean you're in Paris? He said, man, you're supposed to be on your way up here. I said, where's up here? He said, West Grove, Pennsylvania.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
I had completely missed a date, and the bus was almost there. And so I had to hire a plane, come pick me up, and I flew from Paris on into Nashville. We fueled up and went on to West Grove, Pennsylvania, and landed on a strip that was just north of being grass, And I got to looking for a way to get over to where I was going to be playing, which was an outdoor thing. And there wasn't no taxis, when I understood, no buses, no nothing. Mm-hmm. But there was a helicopter sitting over there that a woman was fueling up. And so I walk over to that helicopter, and I asked, I said, lady, can you fly this? She said, I have, I'm an instructor. I said, well, good. Do you know where this is, And she said, yeah, I know where it's at. I said, well, you're going to have to take me over there. She told me, she said, I'm giving this man right here lessons. And I said, he's going to have to wait. You believe I talked her into taking me up in that helicopter, and she landed me out there in a field next to the parking area in West Grove, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
But that was why, and the band had just got on stage, and there's pictures of this all over everywhere. I went from the helicopter straight to the stage with cut-off pants, sunshades, a T-shirt, and I mean, we never missed a lick.
They were vamping as you were landing.
They were vamping when I was coming.
Oh,
you got
wow.
to love that, man. I'm sure there's a lot of other stories, but those old memories that you accumulate after, so many years on the road, man, those are the things that stay with me.
That's some of that glamour and glitz that the public thinks this is all about,
Yeah.
They don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
The glamour and glitz is a crappy dressing room in the back of some crappy theater. It's going up to, it's traveling all over the country and only seeing the back of a venue.
That's
eating truck stop chicken.
Coming in the back door.
There's a whole lot of it. There's a lot of places that if you had to tell me what the venue looked like on any city, I have no idea. I've never seen the marquee, never seen the front of the building.
Absolutely.
You miss all that.
That's
stuff.
right.
That's
You
just
go
part
in the
of it.
back door and they show you the way to the stage, and or to the green room, dressing room, and that's as far as you get.
But like this song says, we've got memories to burn. We got all that.
What a lead in.
Gene Watson, don't waste it on the blues. You know, I know you love music and you're passionate about it. What are some of your other outlets, man? Do you build birdhouses? Do you grow a garden? I mean, tell me some things.
When I'm not working, I can say that I have watched every episode of Gunsmoke that's ever been filmed. and I'm bad about just kicking back and resting when I can, but I've got a little shop down there in Houston, and when I go in, of course I want to get it off my mind for a little while, and I go over there and I might not accomplish anything, but I've got a few cars or pickups that I mess around with, and that's how I relax, working on my cars and everything, and that's about as far as I go, because before I got in the music business full time, that's what I did. I was a paint and body man, and
Really?
everything.
I didn't know that. So what's your dream car, your favorite car of all time?
Well, I've got an '83 Monte Carlo SS that I bought new, and it's got the miles are still in the 20s, but I let it set up so long that it just almost deteriorated, and I've been bringing it back to life, and I've just about got it ready to start showing, and I've got a little '86 Chevrolet pickup that I had a big old Pontiac motor in. I pulled it out and put a 383 stroker in it, and I've been working on that, and just things that probably nobody else would be interested in, but it occupies my mind and passes the day when I'm not working.
I understand. I don't know if it's true, but I heard stories. You remember those AMC Gremlin Spirits? They're AMC cars. I was told that Conway Twitty had one of every color. He had like 10 or 11 of the dang things, and that's
Pacers.
Pacers. That's what they
Pacers.
were.
Pacer.
Is that true?
He come pick me up at the motel one night and won.
Really?
He loved them. He had
had a whole bunch of them.
He had the station wagons, the 2 doors, the 4 doors.
All the cars. Why that one?
I don't know. You say something bad about a Pacer, and you had him on you.
Oh, Lord.
He loved them.
That is so fascinating to me. I'd heard that story around, but I wasn't sure if it's true. I've never seen a picture of it.
That was a natural fact. It was. He loved them.
That's absolutely.
He rode me around in one of his favorites.
One of the people that I never got to meet Conway. He passed away before I ever got a chance.
He was
to
a
meet
great
him.
guy.
I've heard nothing but great things about him. They said he was an intense, diligent song person. He would go through baskets and baskets.
Yeah.
What's for a typical listening session for you back when you were working the charts and everything? How many songs would you go through getting prepared for an album?
Oh, Tracy, I went through so many. Of course, back when I started, I didn't have anybody writing for me. They didn't know who I was, and so they wasn't about to slide me no song that was capable of being a chart song. So my manager owned a distributorship, and not only that, but he, of course, he furnished all the record shops and everything, which there was a lot of them back then. And he furnished all the music for the jukeboxes all around Harris County in Houston, Texas, which is a huge market. And so I would go down there at the distributing company, and I'd go through B-sides, the 45 jukebox 45s. I'd look through them 45s. I'd look through all the albums I could find and pick songs out and everything, and until a few people started hearing me and liked what I did, and like when we finally decided to start moving everything to Nashville as far as working the road, booking out and everything. Yeah. Well, Conway and Loretta took me under their arm, and I was being booked by United Talent, which was Conway and Loretta. And they even took me out on the road before I even had a band or a bus or anything. And I'd follow them and open shows for them. And it was so funny the way it turned out. I was so thankful. One night, Conway Twitty's band would back me up. The next night, Loretta's band would back me up, back and forth like that. And they made me wear a brand new 76 Mercury smooth out, trying to follow them buses.
Wow.
And finally, Loretta told me, said, "You take that Mercury home and park it and come back and finish his tour on my bus."
Wow. She's every time I've ever been around her, she's always been such a gracious lady.
She is a sweetheart. She really is. Well, Twitty was just that way with me. I bought a bus from him once, And Twitty was a big movie buff too. He loved movies. And when we'd worked together after that, well, he'd come over and go through all of our movies and see if he found anything he hadn't seen and offer us this and offer us that. But Twitty was my kind of guy. I mean, he was just a great, great guy.
You ever? I know Conway came from the rock and roll world, and that had to be a pretty drastic change for him. You ever get into rock and roll? You listen to blues? Any other types of music?
When I was young, I used to do a lot of rhythm and blues and a lot of blues, old Jimmy Reed stuff. I used to do that when I was 14, 15, 16, and my younger brother played with me and him. And
you didn't let your sister be in a band?
She had embarrassed me enough. But my dad always sung blues, and he played the old blues guitar, and I'm talking about the Muddy Waters stuff and all that. And so I guess I inherited a lot of that, and I love it. I love that type of music. And, I used to get into that heavy duty.
I miss jukeboxes. I miss the sound of hearing a needle scratch on a record. I mean, I miss all that stuff. And it's, I think album sales have increased. Ernest Tubb Record Shop, I think it's closing down. Have you heard that?
I think they've got something going on trying to open it back up, but I don't know if they'll ever succeed or not. It's supposed to be, I think, three business parties supposed to be working on saving it and opening it up or whatever. But, boy, that's something that's lost that I never thought I'd see gone.
No, but it's coming back to some degree. It's never going to compete with streaming and downloading and all that stuff. But there's the true music fan that loves to hear the good sonic interpretation of all that. They want to hear the full spectrum of sound, and I appreciate that.
I can go to my grave knowing that I played the Midnight Jamboree on the stage in the back of Ernest Tubbs Record Shop, and I was also lucky enough to have Ernest bring me on stage, and just nervous I couldn't hardly stand it. But these are things that I can always look back on and say, I got to do that, and a lot of people didn't.
Here's one of those jukebox songs. It's called The Jukebox Played Along. One of my favorite voices from the 80s, the great Keith Whitley, It Ain't Nothing. So Gene's got a new album out, and I believe it just came out like this week.
I'm thrilled to have it out.
It's called Outside the Box, and we're going to play a couple things. So the lead-off track on here is a song called If I Had Any Pride Left at All. That sounds country just in the title.
Well, it was recorded once country, real country. The original was. Joe Diffie cut it. The one that I got that I kind of patterned mine after was by Etta James.
Really?
And just so much soul, so much emotion. This is the type of song that me, speaking for myself, I can listen to 15 times a day, and I don't get tired of it. I think anybody that's ever been in love and lost or got jilted, put aside, whatever, if they ever listen to this song, the start of it, they can't stop listening. It's that type of song.
Can't say nothing else. Here's Gene Watson, If I Had Any Pride Left at All. Eddie Rabbit. I got to tell you this story. So we had Eddie Raven on the show. Everybody that listens to this show knows what I did. For some reason, I know who Eddie Raven is. I've sang his music. I grew up with him too. I kept calling him Eddie Rabbit, and I couldn't stop. He started to get irritated with me, and I was so embarrassed, and it just kept coming out of my mouth. I don't know.
I'm not talking like 2 or 3
I'm
times.
talking
Gene.
about a
He
dozen.
did it like 15 times. It was so
I couldn't
awful.
Stop. I could not stop. He hadn't been back.
That's funny.
It's funny now. I keep bringing it up so I can apologize to him. So if he ever listens, I'm sorry. Lord have mercy. So how much are you working these days?
Starting to come around. COVID kind of put a cork in our bottle for quite a while. We were down, when it first hit, we were down for 14 months.
Yeah.
And then we just started to come back, and I had to hire a bus driver to make one run with us because mine was supposed to be going to the hospital and everything. Well, it just so happened this bus driver, after we got out of town, he started sneezing, his nose started running, wiping his eyes. And long story short, by the time we got back, 3 of my people was down with it. And so that grounded us again.
Yeah.
And we're just now really starting to get some of those dates that we had lined up before, where we'd have 3 or 4 dates in a row, good routing. Well, they fell out over a period of time,
Oh, yeah.
and we found ourselves doing these one-nighters that we were left with, and we've just about caught up with all of that, and it's starting to string out pretty good now. We're working pretty heavy.
So I'm sure you've got social media stuff that they take care of for you, GeneWatsonMusic.com.
Right.
And any other socials that they do for you?
We do. We got Twitter and
And you're on there every day, ain't you?
Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, just you.
Yeah.
He's addicted.
Don't bring
to,
that up.
He's addicted
Tracy,
to TikTok.
don't bring that up.
Don't let him fool you. Gene
Addicted
Watson
to
loves
Twitter.
TikTok and Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Well, tell us about this new record. So, what was it like recording with Willie Nelson?
Man, it happened so fast. I was at home, and Paula Nelson called me, and I wasn't even where she had my number, but Dallas Wayne gave it to her, and she called me, and we just started talking. I never had talked to her, and still hadn't met her. But she said, Gene, she said, I don't know whether you know it or not, but she said, my dad really, really thinks a lot of you. And I said, well, I appreciate it. I said, I've been singing his songs ever since I can remember, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, two of his, you know, his biggest regrets was, number one, Frank Sinatra invited him out to spend some time with him. And he didn't go. He got on the bus and went back out on the road. And he said that was his biggest regret. And he said his second biggest regret was he got invited to come over to the studio and do a song with you, and he didn't make it. And she said, I think that he'd really like to hear from you. So she gave me his number, and I called him, and he was in Hawaii. And he just started talking like we just finished a conversation an hour before, you know. And he had put one of my songs in his show, and he was doing it in his show.
Really?
Yeah. And he was telling me how he said, I'd really like to get with you and do this song. He'd tell me how much he liked it, the one that he's doing in his show. I said, it'd be one of the biggest privileges of my career to get to do a song with you. And he said, well, what would you want to do? And I said, well, there's a song you wrote several years ago and recorded, and the title of it is Beautiful, Wonderful Memory, Wonderful Future. That's it. I got it wrong. The title of the song is Wonderful Future. And he said, I'm in. I said, just like that, you know. It hit me pretty square in the face, and I didn't know what to think. He said, yeah. He said, let's do it. I said, all right. Well, we went in the studio here, and I laid the tracks down and put my part on it, and we sent it to his engineer. And, man, he laid it down on there and sent it back to me, and I couldn't believe it. It's still, unbelievable to me.
We're going to play it in just a second. It amazes me. Willie's 90, just turned 90 years old, and he's still out touring.
Wide open.
Yeah. I mean, like 100 dates or something. I mean, he goes. It's unbelievable. Yeah. You know, it's. I remember the last 3 or 4 years before George Jones passed, you could tell that he was winding down. But Willie just doesn't seem like there's any stopping
when you
him.
When you think he's about to run out, well, he just lights up again. You know, and I don't mean that the way it sounded. But
yeah, but
here he goes. You know.
It's that natural preservative.
Yeah, he just. I don't think he realizes he might be getting too old, because he just keeps knocking it down, boy.
But as long as you got that music in your soul, maybe that's the trick to it.
You can get in any conversation you want to, in any state, anywhere, and they all know who you're talking about when you say
Absolutely.
Willie Nelson.
Absolutely. I mean,
they know him and love him.
He is a national treasure.
He is.
He should be if he's not. Big duet for Gene Watson. Here's Willie Nelson and Gene, A Wonderful Future.
Behind me.
New music from Gene Watson. Guest star Willie Nelson. The album is called Outside the Box. The song is called A Wonderful Future. Wow. I love a waltz.
Yeah.
They never get old. There's something special about a waltz. I think they're a dying art, man. There's not a lot of people that want to cut a waltz in this modern era.
They've been good to me.
too.
I've had a lot of good waltzes. Yeah, you have.
I've been blessed with them.
And
that's country,
still
though.
love
That's just country music.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big part of the fabric of what we do. I truly love it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed being here. It's always
Been
a
a
pleasure
thrill.
to see you, sir.
been a thrill.
I love the conversation, and it's always good to catch up and make sure you're still doing good.
Well, hopefully I can visit with you again before too awful long.
And maybe we'll get a chance to share a stage somewhere.
That'd be great.
Very soon.
That'd be great. I'd love that.
Yes, sir. Y'all know the deal. Between now and this time next week, y'all keep between the ditches. Honky Tonkin, honky tonkin.